Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 sold more than 2 million copies in the first couple of weeks from his release, and as a lover of RPGs, I've decided to lose my life into it. After spending more than 50 hours into the game, I've completed this run and I'm here today for answering the question, can you beat Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 as a Paladin? Well, like in every other RPGs, like Fallout or Skyrim, you can decide which way you want to play the game. You can be the hero or you can be the evil one, and for this run I've decided to help everyone complete as much quest as possible and raise my reputation to become a real champion. For this build, I've decided to invest my points in strength and agility to be able to make the best use of as many weapons as possible, and at the same time be able to carry a high load. You can decide which style of play to adopt. Personally, I prefer to play with heavy weapons and alternate them with sword and shield. Finally, I invest some point in speech to be able to win as many arguments as possible, so as not to necessarily have to resort to violence in every situation. And some point in chivalry, since we will very often use the horse to move and fight. My journey begins at Lord Capon's side, and after making the decision to serve him as a soldier, I got straight into the training camp to kick his ass. After drinking and having a laugh with the boys, I followed my dear friend Hans to have a nice bath into the lake. He heard some girls singing, so I decided to follow him into the water to go spy those beautiful ladies. Soon we realized that our camp was under attack and the best decision was to run away from that place, but then I've seen some soldier using violence against an innocent woman, so I had the brilliant idea to tell them to stop.
Hey! Hands off her, you brute!
On the other side of the lake, I had to explore the forest with my boy Hans, completely naked, and after trolling some brainless gods, I've managed to fight the one that was trying to kill me from the back with no honor. But unfortunately, while I was trying to choke him, we performed a leap of faith without any pile of hay waiting for us. After being saved by a woman called Bozhena, I've decided to help her to return the favor. First, I've taken the body of the criminal that Hans killed the night before to protect us away. Then I collect some herb for her, but when I came back to his house, I've met some men that were interested in the ambush that we had suffered when we arrived. After removing this menace, Bozhena teach me how to prepare a potion with the herbs I've collected before. Having a rest was essential before getting to the castle where we're supposed to deliver the message, but instead we received a shower of pure horseshit.
Shit!
To restore our morale, we reach an inn where I've met the woman I saw at the lake, but she didn't want to tell me anything. To pay the meal offered by the innkeeper, I had to carry some bags into the pantry, the first of a long series. But while I was doing my dirty job, Hans decided to have a discussion with a god about his being a noble. This obviously started a fight where in the end we had to pay the price. At this point, my journey for being a paladin was just at the beginning, but then I've realized I had no armor and no weapons, no horse, and not knowing anything about fighting techniques. So, after talking with some Trotsky citizens, I've decided to reach the nomad's camp to meet Biscione and ask him to teach me the way of the parry. Near Semine, I finally found my horse that was already being bought by someone else. But thanks to my speech skills, I've succeeded in convincing the owner to give Lentice back to me. Things were starting to get right at this point, but something were missing. Mutt, my dog. After asking information at the hunter's camp, I ran to my little friend and I had to kill an entire family of wolves to save him, but at the end I had to do this because every paladin needs his dog meat. Before proceeding with the main storyline, I had to organize my inventory and was definitely time to get the best OP armor you can get early in the game. I'm obviously talking about the Brunswik armor. It is so easy to get and I can tell you, you will not find any better armor in the first region, so after getting this one you will be ready to go. After upgrading my equipment, was time to prepare for the wedding, but before doing that to the best of our ability, I had to complete some secondary missions. These missions are not essential, but all the NPCs that we will help during these missions we will then be present at the wedding, and thanks to them we will be able to unlock further missions to earn more items. I decided to start by rescuing the master hunter Vostateck. His wife will ask you to take him home since he never returned after going out with his horse. To save him, we will first have to kill all the wolves that are keeping him trapped in the tree. Once freed, He will ask us to take him to his camp, and to do so we will have to follow some tracks in the swamp. It will be a very long and boring journey, and it will take us a lot of time. After reaching his camp, he will ask us to bring back his horse, which was stolen by some mercenaries camped nearby. They are not a problem at all for a well-equipped rider. In the city of Semine, I decided to help Sir Jan and Captain Nodozo. This quest, it's pretty easy. You just have to talk with the bailiff in Troskowitz to convince him to help them. During the trip from Semine to Troskowitz, I decided to test my sword skill by challenging Sir Jan in a honorable match, which I obviously won without too much difficulty. After talking to the bailiff, the mission will take you to Apollonia, and during your journey you will have to follow clues that will lead you to the load of goods that was stolen from the city of Semine. In the woods of Apollonia, I had to defeat the thieves in order to recover the stolen goods. Once they have conquered their fields, the Lord of Semine will ask you to capture Venza, the thief, and then make him serve his final sentence in the city. The rules for this run are simple. Play like a paladin, covertly, maximizing your reputation. The next quest will be fundamental for the participation at the wedding. In fact, we will have to find a perfume and an elegant dress to give to our companion after recruiting her. We will have the possibility to obtain these two items in two ways: obtaining them honestly by buying them and using our charisma, or we can decide to steal them and lose reputation. For this run, I obviously decided not to steal any object, but to obtain them legally. Our companion will be Annaline. After meeting her at the nomad's camp and convincing her to come to the wedding with me, I gave her the object obtained previously. We were finally ready to head to the big event. The marriage was a mission that took me a lot of time to complete. Once I arrived at the castle, I spoke to all the present NPCs, but only some are essential to complete the main mission. First, I went to talk to my friend Svatia, who pointed out Mishka, a girl who was being harassed by the hunter Vostateck. I then bet my groschen that I could save her from this treat. After intruding on their conversation, Vostateck challenged me to a duel, but I declined his challenge because I had a much more important mission to complete. After talking with the Moravians, I decided to help the guard at the gate to collect some food to get rid of the beggars at the castle gates. It was a quick and easy mission since the tables were full of food, even if it wasn't essential, but I wanted to help as many NPCs as possible to increase my reputation. After dancing with Dubraka to please his mother, I was stopped by the Chamberlain, who asked me where my companion who had the task of keeping him busy throughout the ceremony had gone. After asking the guest for information, I discovered that she had been seen with a man dressed in yellow, and after some research I managed to find the place where she was hiding. She was in the company of Hans after becoming fed up with the Chamberlain's presence. Immediately after the discovery, Dubraka reached me and confessed that she had enjoyed dancing with me very much, so I decided to use my skills with women to be able to spend time with her. Once I returned to the Chamberlain, I told him that the concubine will never return, and to distract him, I challenged to dice so I could win his insignia. Beer after beer, dice after dice, I spent more than an hour carrying out this mission, which turned out to be much longer than expected. After getting properly drunk, I challenged Svetia and the Lord of Semine to a duel. Once I defeated the bailiff and the innkeeper Betty at dice, I hid myself so I could listen to the corrupt guard's plan, but unfortunately I was discovered and I had to defend my honor by starting a healthy and intense fight that led me and Hans directly to the castle prisons. The following part of the main story was so long and demanding that I had to cancel all my commitment in order to complete it. On the other hand, you cannot in any way avoid this mission nor put it on hold to complete the secondary ones. The main objective was to save Sir Hans from the gallows, and in order to do so, I had to complete a series of very slow and boring missions, which however allow me to explore the castle as best as possible. First, I was taken from my cell to move some bags, then I had to help the blacksmith forge equipment for the horses in order to gain his trust. I helped the cook Franka open her spice chest, and once I explored the castle, I found Hans' cells so I could help him escape. I also later helped heal the Chamberlain after finding an alchemist station and making him a healing potion. I can't deny that I have repeated this mission many times since most of the rooms in the castle are not accessible and there are really many guards who will have no mercy and will attack you without thinking. I suggest you help the Chamberlain because by doing so, he will be more inclined to help you during your conversation with Lord von Borgov. You can diagnose his condition right away if your skills are high enough, or do as I explained before and prepare a potion for him in the castle tower. After clarifying the situation and being freed by Lord von Borgov, I headed with Sir Hans to Nebakov to bring the Lord's message. Once we reach the gates of the castle, we will meet the assistant Michael, who will introduce us to the people in the castle and challenge us to an honorable duel where we can choose which weapon to use. Once we return to Trotsky Castle, Lord von Borgov will tell us that a soldier has been captured and locked up in the dungeon and will give us the task of interrogating him to find out more about the ambush he recently suffered. Also, in this case you can decide whether to interrogate him peacefully while maintaining your status as a knight, or torturing him and losing part of your reputation. To be able to use the first method, you must have strengthened your charisma and dialectics, because otherwise you will not be able to obtain any information. Once we have obtained the confession from the prisoner, we will discover that the ambush was organized by the son of the Lord of Semine, and von Borgov will order us to present ourselves at his castle to ask for explanation regarding this event. The Hashef guard will proceed by asking questions to the Lord of Semine, and you can decide to protect him after discovering that his son is involved by offering him a fair trial, or support Hashef by deciding to massacre everyone present. I tried to defend the Lord of Semine like a true knight, but unfortunately our guard had already organized the killing of all the soldiers in Nebakov Castle. After a quick conversation with the son who was hiding in the main tower of the castle, I returned to Lord von Borgov, and during the journey Hans will ask if it was really right to massacre the Lord of Nebakov like that. Once we reach the castle, we can also decide in this case to reveal the guard's decision to von Borgov, or we can remain silent and let Hans speak. In this case, I decided to play like a true honorable knight by revealing his guard's plan to the Lord. This event will be fundamental to the story, as von Borgov will decide to march on Nebakov to destroy it and will ask us to join him. The night before the march, there will be a big party at Trotsky Castle where we will simply have to enjoy the party and complete some small tasks. I spoke to as many NPCs as possible to increase my reputation. I also recovered von Borgov's armor from the blacksmith, and after giving it to him, I went for a good night of sleep. The next day I reached Hans, who was waiting for me to leave, and we set off for Nebakov. However, during our march we were taken by surprise by some soldier who had set a trap for us, and after having massacred them, thanks to a winning strategy, I had to face the captain of the enemy forces in a honorable encounter, one without too much effort. Before I could finish off the captain, I was stopped by his men who held me prisoner along with Hans. For the following mission, I had to cover the role of Godwin. I went to the ambush site to look for traces of Henry and Hans, but I was stopped by Erik's men. To be able to continue, I had to beat him in a duel, but we were interrupted by some bandits who wanted to kill us. After defeating them and gaining Erik's trust, he decided to escort me to Nebakov to search for my missing companions. Once I arrived at the castle, I was welcomed by the same captain who had kidnapped my friends, and after an intense discussion, he proposed to free them if I helped him repel the attack on the fort he was suffering. Once the attack is repelled and Harry and Hans are freed, the captain reveals his identity to us. From now on, we will know him as Captain Zizka. Back playing as Henry, I followed Godwin to help him bury the war dead. After having done this, I finally unlocked the most awaited weapon in the game, the Arquebuse, and after a few test shots, I was finally ready to defend the fort, because the enemy was already here. After repelling the enemy forces in the various levels of the castle, we were captured by enemy reinforcements and taken directly to the dungeon of Trotsky Castle, where we were tortured. Robbed of my sword and armor, I entered the castle stealthily to reach the room of Istvan. the traitor, and finally kill him. Once this threat was removed, I recovered my equipment and found the key to escape. We headed into the tunnels under the castle, which lead us outside of the walls. I had to reach the top of the hill and go through the rocks to reach Godwin and Katherine. The forest was full of guards, so I had to use a stealth approach and use the right timing to avoid being discovered. Having reached the castle of Suchdol, we were welcomed by Peter of Pisek, who will prove to be an important ally, and his castle will be a fundamental point where we will have to return many times following the main quest. Once recovered, I helped Zizka find all the members of his gang. First, we went to the Devil's Lair, where we saved Kubenka from an ambush, and after following the traces of an alleged ambush, we also saved the Dry Devil. Having obtained more information about the member of Zizka's gang, I immediately started looking for them. After going to Grund, I asked the city priest for information, but after failing to recite the prayer he requested, I had to defend myself after he tried to punch me. I then had to go to Kattenberg to complete an endless series of mini-missions that led me to Goatskin, who revealed to me where to find the city's underground map. Once I obtained the map, I went near Grund, where I convinced the bailiff of Miskovitz to free Janosh from the pillory. Furthermore, to complete the mission, I had to investigate the missing mineral lode in the Grund mine. A very boring mission, but which is essential for completing the main quest. Once I reached the city of Psitok, I asked the dice players for information about a certain giant snake, and after obtaining what I needed to know, I went to the location they indicated. He was about to be hanged by some men, but thanks to my charisma and excellent reputation, I managed to convince them to let him go. After untying him, I was finally able to return to the Devil's Lair, since the team was now complete. I returned near Grund to look for evidence in the silver mines against Vavak. After obtaining information from the miners and going through all the underground path, I arrived at the secret room where some workers were held prisoner. Having obtained the evidence I needed, I returned to Christian of Pisek to tell him what I discovered. For the next mission, I had to sneak into the Ruthard's castle to save Hans again. First, I spoke to Rosa to get her to tell me where the secret entrance to the castle was. Then I went into the forest to the exact location she indicated. This is a mission that absolutely needs to be completed in stealth mode, as the castle walls are full of guards who will keep roaming around to find intruders. Once we reach the room in the tower, where we will find Hans and the Frenchman, we will have two options: convince Hans to escape through the underground passage from which we arrived, or decide to clear the way and lead them to the horses and then escape through the main door. Obviously, the first option is much simpler and faster, but my charisma level didn't allow me to convince him, so I had to stealthily eliminate all the guards to allow him to get to the horses. Don't try to kill all the guards with brute force, because some of them will immediately go and kill Hans and you will have to start the mission all over again. Once the mission was completed, I immediately returned to Kattenberg to be able to infiltrate the councillors' banquet and discover their plans. I would never have been able to attend the banquet if I had not convinced the waiter to give me his position and his uniform. This mission was a pain in the ass, since I spent almost 30 minutes serving wine to the nobles and listening to all their bullshit, but it's a mandatory mission, so I was very careful to pour the right wine that was requested of me. While I continued to serve wine and bring food as Henry, at Rebor's fortress, Godwin was trying to gain the support of as many nobles as possible throughout his dialectics and swordmanship. Once King Sigismund arrived, I returned to Harry's shoes to be able to serve him and finally discover his next moves. Next, the game made me play as Godwin again, and I had to defend the castle walls from a knight's invasion until Henry's arrived. Having repelled the attackers, I set off with the devil and his gang for Kattenberg to foil King Sigismund's assaults. Since the city was overrun when we arrived, we had to enter through the passage under the city. After splitting up, Samuel and I saved his mother, killed the enemies inside his house, and joined the resistance in the street of the city. Before undertaking this mission, I advise you to equip yourself as best as possible, as the enemies are very high level and have high damage. Once we were safe, we went to the Devil's Lair to organize ourselves and launch the final attack. Next, I went to Sigismund's camp to talk to the commander, who, however, to gain his trust, instructed me to find a camp of enemy soldiers. who had stolen an important document. Part of the mission consists in obtaining this document by massacring the soldier, but being a paladin, I preferred to spare them and have them to give me the document without shedding blood. Once the task was completed, I returned to the camp to talk to the commander, who rewarded me and offered me a drink. During the night, a guard was stabbed. There are various suspects and Musa is one of them. After locking him in his tent, I promised the captain that I will look for clues regarding the attack. After having explored the camp, looked for clues and infiltrated Musa's tent to ask him for explanation, the following morning I participated into the trial. Grozav was found guilty, but not upsetting his fate, we had to kill him so we could protect the commander. Once I discovered the plan of the Prags, I led them into the trap organized by Zizka and massacred them together with my comrades in arms. Once we returned to the Devil's Lair, Zizka brought us together to organize an assault on the castle where Lord von Borgov was hiding, and during the night we set fire to the houses outside the walls to convince the villagers to escape. After defeating von Borgov's forces, we took up position outside of the castle. After waiting all night, the following morning we tried to convince von Borgov to turn himself in, but unfortunately the only way was to break down the doors and take him by force. The following mission was definitely one of the longest I faced during the main quest. It is made up of an infinite number of mini missions that will allow us to better prepare ourselves to reach the Italian court. In fact, after recovering my Italian pink clothes and having them teach me a few words of Italian, I went to see Godwin, who explained to me that he will speak Latin much better under the influence of alcohol. After playing in his shoes at the meeting at the court, in fact I had to listen to the various versions of the ecclesiastical participants and then give them a verdict, since I had pretended to be the Cardinal Pozzo. While Godwin kept the meeting participation busy, I entered the castle play as Harry and stealthily eliminated the guards in the courtyard to capture the west gate. Unfortunately, Biscione was discovered by the Italian guard while he was having fun with his woman. Once the guard and the cook had been eliminated, we had to repel the enemy attack, since Erik with his army were at the gates. After managing to escape to Suchdol, we discovered that the traitor was the Frenchman himself. The enemy was at the gates, so to avoid unnecessary massacre, I decided to challenge Erik to an honorable duel. It was an intense duel with a very high level enemy, but we were interrupted by the arrival of additional enemy forces at the castle. I immediately went back to the others to warn them of the imminent danger, and once the soldiers on the walls had been pushed back, we had to regroup. I've recruited men for the night guard and made sure everything was under control, but upon asking a guard if he had seen any treats, I discovered that an enemy had killed a Pisek man and had infiltrated our ranks wearing his armor. At that precise moment, that night we were attacked by surprise and had to repel the enemies, killing them and knocking down their siege ladders. The following morning I recruited 3 men for an assault against the enemy, and while they distract them on the battlefield, Hans and I covered them from the walls. To take revenge, the enemy launched an attack on our defense again, but at the end of the battle, Samuel was no longer among us. He had been kidnapped and taken to the enemy camp. I therefore decided to enter the enemy camp to free Samuel and find out more about their plans. First of all, after leaving the walls, I went east where I found a trunk containing the Prague uniform, and once I put it on, I managed to blend it with them. Then I went further north where I found 2 soldiers who were talking about a keyword to be able to enter from the main entrance. I suggest you to save your game before proceeding, as the word is random and changes every time you'll try to enter again. Once inside the camp, I found Samuel, who was held hostage by the French Voquelin, who I did not spare due to his betrayal. Before leaving the camp, I went to the house where General von Aulitz was hidden, who having been wounded by Dry Devil during the siege and was on the verge of death. Being a paladin, I granted him an honorable death, but you can decide to execute him without mercy. Before leaving his hideout, I made sure not to forget his armor, which is one of the best in the game. Having recovered Samuel, I carried him out of the camp, passing among the guards who had probably lost their eyes, and once we reached the horses, we were able to return to our friends. You can decide to save Samuel or abandon him and escape alone, but the rules of this run didn't allow me to abandon any allies. Obviously, if you let him die, you will lose some reputation. Once safe, it was time to rally the troops to save my friends trapped in Suchdol Castle, which was under siege by the Prog's people. Once I entered the castle, I made my way eliminating all the enemy troops and saving my allies, and so I beat Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 as a paladin. Thank you guys for watching. Leave a like if you enjoyed the video and you learned anything, or leave a dislike if you didn't learn anything. I am Hyper, and I'll see you to the next video.